can't see the name, so you gotta.
Oh, you can't because it's on the phone.
Yeah. So I think it's
Second one. Oh, maybe
Good afternoon, everybody.
yes.
Listen, we should be in here for a presentation on endangered missing people. Our instructor is Cindy Neff. I'll let her introduce herself. She's what we refer to as a short timer here at the DCJS. She saw her husband retired a few months back, and she saw he's enjoying it so much that
I am counting it down. It's only 137 more office days. Okay, I'm not counting weekends anymore. I'm just counting office days. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Cindy Neff. I'm the program manager of the New York State Missing Persons Clearinghouse, which is at the Division of Criminal Justice Services. So I'm here today to talk to you about endangered missing person alerts that we have in New York State. Let me ask you, how many alerts do you think New York State has? You might have heard from other states they have like green alerts, amber alerts, blue alerts, silver alerts, indigenous people alerts, like they're just adding on all the time. How many do you think New York State has? 3? We used to at one time. That was a good guess maybe a few years ago. 4? Nope. So we actually have 6. 6 alerts in New York State. We have the amber, abducted adult alert, which is new, which I'm going to talk to you about. Blue alert, new legislation last year. We're going to talk about that. Those are all administered by the state police. And then we have missing child alert, missing college student alert, and missing vulnerable adult alert, the most popular category. I can tell you there's a lot of people with dementia who go missing. And so those are the 3 that are administered by my office at the Missing Persons Clearinghouse. So, to begin with, I want to explain to you, how many of you have ever heard of the Missing Person Clearinghouse? I'm seeing a few hands, that's great. How many of you have ever called us for assistance? Great, some more hands, I like to see that. So I want to explain to you who we are at the Clearinghouse and what we do, and then I'll get into what we do for the alerts, okay? So here we are, this is our staff. We're growing all the time. We just recently, in June, started an evening shift because we were so busy. We have our 800 number, which is a 24/7 number, and we were having staff on call after regular business hours. Well, each staff member was averaging like 32 calls a month after regular business hours, and you can imagine how happy their spouses are when they're getting those calls at 3 o'clock in the morning to activate an alert. So, with the help of Chuck Tyree, our pal here, has helped us get more staff into the clearinghouse. So we're so fortunate in June we started an evening shift. So now we actually have people working from 8 a.m. until midnight. And then after midnight and on weekends, our staff are still on call. So they still have that buffer for their Christmas gifts, right? Their Christmas club. Any old people in the room remember Christmas clubs? Okay. So I always tease staff when they're complaining about the extra money they're getting when they're having to do all that work. Just think about how happy you'll be at Christmas when you have that extra money. So this is our staff. These pictures were taken when we were honoring National Runaway Awareness Day in November. And you can see on my picture representing the Packers. Any Packers fans in here? What? Oh, come on. All right, well, I'm very excited because in another 2 weeks, well, 10 days, I'm going to be at Lambeau Field, and I'm going to see the Packers put a whooping on the Vikings. So I'm very excited about it. I've never been there. It's on my bucket list, so I'm going to do that. So this is our staff. I'm the exception in our office because I have no former law enforcement experience. All these other people have all been involved in law enforcement. They've all been police officers in the past, except for Melissa over here on the bottom right, who is our secretary. I have a degree in criminal justice, and as the manager, I just like bossing people around, so I got the job. All right, so in our clearinghouse, as I just said, we have our missing person investigative specialists who are very experienced. We have our 24/7 hotline. Some of you have called that. That's our website, criminaljustice.ny.gov. We have /missing. We have a lot of good information on there about the services we provide, and you can also look at cases of missing children, vulnerable adults, and college students that were publicized. Our services include case intake and management. We publicize alerts and non-alerts, so even those cases that don't meet that criteria for activating an alert, we're still going to help law enforcement and families with that, and we publicize that on our website. We provide guidance to law enforcement on short-term and long-term type cases, and we have lead development and dissemination. So we get a lot of calls on our hotline, and when people are looking at our website, they can click on a button if they want to submit a lead. So we get those leads all the time. We will pass those on to the investigating agency, and in addition, our investigative specialists work on developing leads also that they share with law enforcement. This is the kind of work that we're able to do that some law enforcement agencies don't have the time or the resources to do. And this is just an example of some of the databases that we have access to. For example, we have Spotlight. Anybody here know of Spotlight or use it? Spotlight is free. I got one person there. You know what? Because you use Spotlight and you know what it is, you're going to get a book, Lost Person Behavior, Your Lucky Day. Yep, it's written by Bob Kester. It's excellent information on every type of missing person you can think of. He's got all the data in there. So, Spotlight uses AI to help identify victims of sex trafficking, and it's using like pictures and phone numbers to look at adult advertisements online on certain websites, and it helps us identify those kids. So that's a free thing that law enforcement can use. Traffic Jam is something that we just started using, and it's more advanced than Spotlight. We're finding better results, but it's super expensive. It's $38,000 a year. So it is expensive. A lot of law enforcement is not going to be able to access that. If you have the money and your agency can do it, you're a very large agency, I would recommend getting it. But if you don't, call us. Our staff can help because we do have access to that. So that's just an example. We have Carfax for police. Our staff are very good at doing OSINT, so they're looking at that open source and getting that information to pass on to you to help you with your investigations. Here's a couple examples. We had this missing child alert last September, and Elisa went missing. She's 14 years old. Wait, does this sound right? She's driving a car. She's 14 years old. There's an issue here, right? So she was depressed. She was feeling suicidal. She took the family's car. Our staff recommended to the investigating agency, have you checked with the technology, the GPS tracking technology that's in that car to see if you can locate it? And they were like, that's a great idea. We didn't think about this. So they did, and I forget, Tim, do you remember if it was like OnStar or something like that? So it was, they contacted the company and they located her. The car, she ditched it in the woods, and as police were coming, she ran out. This was a Buffalo case. Some Buffalo people might be familiar with this. And so they were able to locate her. So that is one way that we can assist. This is another way. We had a girl who was entered in as a runaway. We were publicizing the case. One of our investigative specialists starts looking at her social media, and you know what? She's got a boyfriend. And look at what her boyfriend's wearing, a very nice bracelet on his ankle. So he called and let law enforcement know, hey, her boyfriend, she's probably with her boyfriend. Look, you know where he is because he's got the tracking bracelet. So they were able to locate her that way. And here's a really fantastic case that gives it a good example of how our investigative specialists have time to help you with these types of cases where you might not necessarily have the resources or the time. So we have this girl, Shundis, who's missing. And our investigative specialist starts looking at her social media, and she's like, here she's posting these recent pictures, and you can see where that one picture in the center, we have the red circle there. She noticed a bus in the background. So then she starts researching where are those buses, who has buses that look like that. So she finds one. It's in Massachusetts. Then she looks at another picture, and it has this sign hanging in the bathroom, and it has this right here written on it. So now she knows FAVC, she looks that up, she knows where that is. Then we have the McDonald's. There's more pictures. She's walking through a McDonald's parking lot, and our investigative specialist goes, hey, that's a McDonald's that hasn't been remodeled. That's an old style McDonald's. Let me see in that area in Massachusetts where if that McDonald's is in that area. So she finds that McDonald's. She verifies by the building in the background, the telephone pole in the building. So it's kind of like Where's Waldo kind of thing, but she's doing a great job. And then she provides all this information to the investigating agency. And that was another thing that she saw. Another picture, there's a name tag on her blazer there, but she couldn't make out the name of the company. So that's just one way we help. We have other things that we do. We administer Project Lifesaver in New York State. Is anybody familiar with Project Lifesaver? Do you want to explain it to everybody, or you want me to?
You can go.
So Project Lifesaver is a radio frequency tracking device that helps with kids who have autism or adults who have dementia who are prone to wander. Police get the receiver, and the person who can wander wears the transmitter. So it's like a bracelet. They can put it on their wrist or ankle, and it puts out radio signals. You know, like if you're tuning to an AM radio station and you're putting it on that number, that frequency number. So if the person goes missing, law enforcement tune in that frequency that's attached to that person's bracelet, and then it goes beep, 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 and they can find them. Old technology, but it works great. It's not dependent on cellular service and things like that. They tested it out in New York City, worked in the subways where the cell tracking didn't. So those are that's one thing that we do. We've provided that equipment throughout New York State. We've used our Missing and Exploited Children Fund money to do that. Anybody here ever file New York State tax? Yeah, okay. Did you ever look and see where you can check off a box to donate money to missing and exploited children? We manage that fund, which there are now a lot of checkoff boxes on the New York State income tax. So we're in competition with a lot of people on that, but you can check off a box to donate money to that, and we manage it. We use that money to purchase the Project Lifesaver equipment and give that to law enforcement throughout the state. We also have our missing person cold case panel review. This is awesome group that we put together, subject matter experts from across the state that we brought in. We will go out to a PD at their request at no cost. We will do an initial review at the police department, help them organize their cases, make suggestions of things they should do. We bring in the crime analysis centers. They help with timelines and maps and things like that. And then when they're ready, they'll come to DCJS and do a review, a presentation for our entire panel. Runaway Intervention Program is something we kicked off last September. I'm super excited about it. Our partners in Buffalo are serving as our pilot program, which is about to kick off. So they're working with Buffalo PD, which will be co-located at the Child Advocacy Center, and making referrals to them. The Child Advocacy Center has built up this program as a runaway referral service. So kids who run away will get referred to the Child Advocacy Center. They will be working with families before the child is even located. Let's start finding out what's going on and getting services in place. When the child is located, they'll have access to all the services, and it's Best Self that runs the Child Advocacy Center in Buffalo. So they have all kinds of services that will be beneficial to the children. So we're just about to get that kicked off, and I'm really excited about it. You might not know, but 98% of missing children in New York State are categorized as runaway, and 50%, actually a little more than 50% of children who are entered as missing in New York State have multiple missing episodes. We really only have about 6,000 kids who go missing one time. The rest, out of our 12,000 entries we had last year, were for kids who had multiple missing episodes. So those kids can have anywhere from 2, and last year we had one kid up to 59 times reported missing. So that's our goal, is it's 1,800 kids who are responsible for 54% of the missing person records. Let's work with those kids and help them be successful people, academically and in life, get them healthy and get them the services they need. That's the point of RIPSTOP. We provide training and technical assistance. We'll do in-service training. Tim, who's a supervisor right there in the back in our office, he goes out and does child abduction response training. So we're always trying to keep up with technology and new techniques and getting it out there in the field. And then we have community outreach. We just rebooted our internet safety presentation program. We have just sent out an announcement, I think it was like, in July or June, July, and we had over 150 requests from schools where we'll go in and we'll do a presentation for middle school and high school kids and also presentations for the parents. So we're just, again, keeping up on that. Technology is difficult for us and families, and this is going to help with that. So we're excited to be able to do that. And finally, we have next week, we're doing a missing child rescue operation out in Buffalo, where we've partnered with subject matter experts throughout the country who we are bringing in to work active missing child cases in the Buffalo area in Erie County. And we've partnered with the Erie County District Attorney's Office, Amherst PD, Buffalo PD, Cheektowaga PD. We're going to work 25 cases. We have 5 teams of experts going to be doing this. We are partnering with big corporations that are going to be helping with this: Meta, Cash App, AT&T, Verizon. So we're really hoping, and once again, that's partnering with their Child Advocacy Center. That's where we're holding the event. So we're pretty excited. They just got a new building. They just moved in last week, and they're kind enough to let us hold this operation there. So fingers crossed that we have good results, and then maybe we can do this in other areas of the state as it goes on. We have Find Them. This is a web app that we designed to help law enforcement who's responding to missing person reports. So you can go onto that and put in the age and the circumstances, and it'll give you a list of tips and resources that you can use when responding to that case. We have links in there, so we're going to talk about alerts. If you need to activate an alert, those phone numbers are hyperlinked. You can click on that, give us a call, hang up, you're going right back to your list. What do I do next? And we have other resources and links in there like mapping, our Project Lifesaver information, things like that. So now we get to the alert program. As I mentioned earlier, the state police, it's unusual in this country. New York State is the only state that has alerts separate between 2 agencies. But we do work very well with the state police. We have to. They refer cases to us, we refer cases back to them, and we try to have really good communication and a good partnership. So the state police, they administer the Amber Alert, the Abducted Adult Alert, and the Blue Alert. At the Clearinghouse, we administer the Missing Child Alert, Missing College Student Alert, and Missing Vulnerable Adult Alert. Anybody have any idea who this little girl is? That's Amber. Yep. That's Amber Hagerman, who was abducted and murdered just when I think she was 8 years old, abducted right off her bicycle when she was out playing. And that's where Amber Alert came from. It's named after her. Some people think it's colored because now we have all these other colors for alerts, green alerts. Anybody have any idea what a green alert is? In some states, it's for the military. I would just call that AWOL, but whatever. So here we go, Amber Alert activation criteria. The child has to be under the age of 18, and they have to have a reasonable belief that they're in danger of seriously bodily harm or death by actions of another or due to a proven mental or medical condition. So under 18, and you have to believe that they're at a serious risk. You know, we hear a lot of times as soon as people put out on social media a lot, this kid is missing. And if you read the comments, people are like, why isn't this an Amber Alert? Well, we can't have that many Amber Alerts because it's going to become like a car alarm. Does anybody pay any attention to those? No. So we need to keep that for the most serious cases. It's also reasonable cause to believe that it has happened. So that can be proved either through an eyewitness, somebody actually saw a child be abducted. We had that case quite a few years ago. There was a girl down in Rockland County who was getting off her school bus. And as she got off their school bus, 3 masked men came up and grabbed her and shoved her in the trunk of a car and took off. And a neighbor witnessed it, so she immediately called 911. And they were so fortunate because the detective who was called out on that from Ramapo PD had just gone through an Amber Alert class. And he went back to his station and he said, "Chief, we're not prepared for this. We need to be ready. You never know when a situation like this is going to happen." So he put together a go pack. He had the application in there for request of an Amber Alert, which they don't use anymore, but this was years ago. And so he had everything ready. So they got the Amber Alert out very quickly for this girl. It turned out great that they were able to locate her as a result of the Amber Alert. So people were out looking like crazy for her. What happened is, once the Amber Alert went out, the suspects the kidnappers got nervous. They were idiots anyways, but most criminals are, right? They're not brilliant. So they had stolen the family's car a few weeks before that, and there was a checkbook in it, so they thought the family had a lot of money, so they were going to kidnap her for money. But the family didn't have a lot of money. This just was crazy. So they ditched the car in the back of a parking lot behind an apartment complex. A woman looks out and sees the car out there. She calls 911. She's a Spanish speaker. The dispatcher doesn't understand what she's saying. As luck would have it, a detective is walking through the communications department right then. He speaks Spanish. He gets on the phone. They immediately go to that parking lot. They pop the trunk. There she is. She's still in the trunk of the car. Thank God it wasn't a hot day or super cold day. It was like in April, so it was fine. But she was shoved in there, completely traumatized by this event. And as it would have it, this is how dumb these criminals are, and thankfully they are that dumb. Where they dumped the car was where one of them lived. It was the mother who called, who saw the car. So it's so ironic, right? It's just crazy. So anyway, that was an eyewitness. Long story to get to. That was an eyewitness. Accumulation of information or evidence that points to this child has been abducted, or eliminating all other possibilities. If it is factors in familiar cases, no Amber activation if the case is simply a custody dispute or, they failed to return the child on time, unless some of these things happen. If the child was forcibly taken, and we've seen that before, punch the mother in the mouth or the grandmother, whoever has the kid, and take the kid and take off. Assault or menacing during the taking, verbal threats to harm a child. It's unfortunate, but we have heard and seen these types of cases where a parent will say, especially in divorce and custody cases, if I can't have him, nobody will. And you know that they're capable of doing harm to that child. Criminal history, domestic violence or mental health history, substance abuse users, child's age. If it's a very young child, it's going to be a lot different than an older child, right? 15 compared to 5, something like that. Medical condition of a child can play a role, and if there's an order of protection. So all things that could make an exception to that rule. And rule out if they're just lost, and we see that all the time, like especially with kids with autism who wander or become lost. They're not going to qualify for an Amber Alert. That's why we're fortunate in New York State we have a missing child alert. And we're going to talk about that more later. Runaway, voluntarily missing. This is kind of a gray area. It's difficult when you have kids who are meeting people online, so they voluntarily went with a guy who's online, but are they really, is it who they thought it was going to be? What about their age? And the age can really come in with that too. Like, you're gonna treat that different if it's a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old who met somebody online and left, compared to, and we had this case a couple of years ago, a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old who met somebody online, and some guy from New Jersey came and picked them up. So that's totally different, right? Once again, that age really plays a role in there. And then suicidal, we've had a lot of cases, alerts that we've activated, missing child alerts for kids who are suicidal, but they're not going to qualify for an Amber Alert. And that was really high in 2021 when the kids went back to school. In that September and October, our request for missing kids who were suicidal was off the charts. It was crazy. We're in the process of working with OMH, and in January we're going to put out a webinar to help law enforcement get information to you guys about kids who are missing, who are suicidal, and weighing the facts of, you know, how you should treat it and what should be done with those kids when they're located. So we're going to get that information out there. You could have met all that criteria I just talked about, but you don't have enough information that can be helpful. What do you think will happen if you put out Amber Alert, you don't have a plate for a vehicle, but you just put out white van? What's going to happen to your communication section as the calls start coming in? I just saw a white van, I saw a white van. This happened many years ago down in the Long Island area, and they were inundated because they put white truck, and they didn't have any other information. They never did it again. You've got to have some detailed information that's really going to be specific to help. Or if an extended period of time goes on, I mean, it could play a role in activating, or it could make it, it's just too much. But there's so much new technology now where you can track. We have LPRs everywhere and cell phone tracking, so it depends on what kind of information you're getting. Here's an Amber Alert that we had last September. Does anybody remember this case? It was really hit home for some of us, right, because it was so close. This little 9-year-old girl was abducted from Moreau State Park while she was out riding her bike. This hit me really hard because my grandkids have camped there, and my granddaughter has been riding her bike there. So I was like pretty emotional about this one. You never know, this can happen anywhere. So an Amber Alert was activated for her. Obviously, she was, you know, they had information. They first wanted to, they didn't have an eyewitness, right? But they were working all other leads and trying to figure out what could have happened to her. They did a search first, and then they realized that she had been abducted, so then they activated the Amber Alert. Any questions on Amber Alert? All right, so this is our new Abducted Adult Alert. Once again, this is administered by the state police. They currently, because it's so new, do not have a platform for activating these alerts. So we are assisting them through the Missing Person Clearinghouse. Right now, you call the state police and request an abducted adult alert, but we will activate it as a vulnerable adult alert, and then we'll just note on there that it's for an abducted adult. So kind of a workaround right now until they get their new system. But an abducted adult alert is for anyone who's 18 or older who you believe has been abducted and they're in danger. And we have activated a few of these since this went into play. But it is new, and it was the one glaring thing that New York was missing, was an abducted adult. I told you all the other alerts we had, but if you're not a college student and you were 25 and you were abducted, there was nothing we could do. It was kind of dumb. So now they do have an abducted adult alert. The blue alert is also new. This just got passed last March, the legislation, also administered by the state police. This is if the public can help with identifying a suspect who has harmed a police officer, then you could put out a blue alert. If a police officer is missing in relation to his official duties, his or hers, they can get a blue alert if they think it would be helpful to the investigation. Or if there is information that there's a threat to law enforcement and getting the information out to the public, they can use blue alert. They have not used it yet in New York State. They did consider it one time when the guy on I-88, does anybody remember this, was shooting at the police officers when they pulled him over on I-88. They kind of considered using it, but then they found him pretty quick, so then they did. Any questions on Blue Alert? So Amber, abducted, and adult, and Blue Alert, you call the New York State Police at their communications section. That's who you call for those alerts. If you call for an Amber and it doesn't meet the criteria, they're going to refer it to us for missing child alert. Sometimes we'll get a call and we're like, whoa, wait a minute. I think this is going to qualify for an Amber. So we will call Amber and have them call the law enforcement agency and get them right on that. So we do referrals back and forth. But that's who you're going to call for those. Now at this missing person clearinghouse, I told you we have our missing child and missing college student alert. So the child must be under the age of 21 to be a missing child, or a college student can be any age, doesn't matter what their age is. And they have to be at a credible risk of harm for us to activate an alert. Now I showed you Charlotte's Amber Alert a few minutes ago. It started out as a missing child alert. So when we got the call and Amber was like, oh, we're not there yet, we don't have the criteria, we activated it as a missing child alert. And then later it got upgraded to an Amber Alert. So that's just how it works with us going back and forth with the state police in that partnership. Vulnerable adult, I told you that we do a lot of these. Anyone 18 or older who has a cognitive impairment, mental disability, or a brain disorder, and police believe they're at a credible risk of harm to themselves. There's a lot of people out there with dementia, you guys, and a lot of people with dementia in cars. It's kind of scary. So you get those wrong-way drivers. It's super dangerous. And it's dangerous for the people too, especially if they've wandered, if it's winter, you might not have very good outcome. So we have our missing vulnerable adult alert. We'll put it up on highway signs if we have the vehicle information. It will go up on the highway signs. And we put it up on our website. Now this is our activation map, which both the state police and we use it for all alerts. And you can see that it's broken out into circles. Anybody want to guess why they're in circles on that map? Yes?
So you don't get needless alerts when you're 300 miles away?
Right, you do have to, like we had a referral we made to Texas not too long ago. Texas activates their entire state for an alert, which is kind of crazy. They did a wireless emergency alert for an Amber Alert that they knew was in the Houston area and woke up people at 6 o'clock in the morning across the whole state, like millions of people. I'm like, no, you need to regionalize this. So that is one reason why we want to have our 12 regions so we're not over-activating. So if we have a vulnerable adult activated down in Region 12 on Long Island, people in Buffalo really don't care, do they? Unless we think that they're going to be there or there's evidence that they are there, we're not going to activate that region. So why did we put them in squares? Why do you think they're in circles? Because of the broadcast area. So when Amber Alert was first developed, it was to go out over TV and radio stations, and that's how these stations broadcast their signals, go out into this circular. So you can see, like for New York City area, we have 40 radio stations, that's the R, and 8 TV stations. So that's why they overlap, because it's the broadcast signals, that's how they go out. So to get an alert that we do at the clearinghouse, you need to make the missing person entry, a file 6, into the system. And there's a box you can check on there. Yes, a drop down, actually, you're requesting, and you tell which kind of alert you're requesting. You're going to put a photo in the missing person entry, or you can email it to us because our staff is really good at quickly resizing photos and getting them in the missing person entry. Right now, because of the NCIC rules, it has to be under 16 KB. So we've got all kinds of apps, and they're very good at doing that, so they can help you. And then you give us a call at the clearinghouse, and you're going to talk to an investigative specialist. They're going to get the information, and we're going to see if that qualifies for an alert. And Tim, you can speak up if I'm missing anything, right?
You're good.
Okay. So this just kind of gives you a general idea of the difference between Amber Alert and our other missing child, college student, and vulnerable adult. The New York State Police Activate, I kind of droned that down today for you. An Amber Alert will stay active until they actually find the child. There's only one instance since I've been at the clearinghouse, and that's been almost 20 years, where an Amber Alert was not resolved in a timely manner and they had to cancel the Amber without actually finding the child, and then we continue to publicize it as a non-alert. This was a case, it's a really bad, awful outcome of a child who was with his mom out in Wayne County. They were working on a farm, and her boyfriend killed her and the baby. They had found the mom and couldn't find the baby. That's when the Amber Alert was activated. And it was, how much longer, Tim? Like maybe a year before they found the baby?
It was at least 6 months.
Yeah, it was a long time. He was buried on the farm. So that was like a really awful outcome, but that's the only time that they canceled an Amber without actually finding the child. And we went over less than 18. We all use broadcast fax, email, text messages. Right now, only Amber Alert uses wireless emergency alerts, but I'm going to talk to you about a change that's going to be coming up about that. Broadcasters will air Amber, and it's at their discretion for our alerts, but they're super good about getting it on the news and putting it on their websites. And then we have our highway, lottery, and DMV message signs and LPRs are activated. Now, when we send out a request to law enforcement to activate their LPRs, it's the only thing we don't do regionally. We do it statewide, and the reason we do that is because we want them, part of our message is, will you please activate your LPRs on this license plate, and will you do a look back? So if we have a missing child, say that's been missing child alert for a girl who's 11 or 12 and got a guy online, she's taken off, right? She might not just stay in the Albany area, say it was from here. We want the people in Buffalo to do a look back too. Because what if that vehicle has been in that area in the past 2 weeks? That's a pretty good lead that maybe that's where they are. So we do want to get those LPR notifications out statewide and ask people to just do a quick look back and see if they have any encounters with that license plate. Here's the last 10 years of our alert activations. You can see I told you missing vulnerable adults, super busy. We did 144 last year. Very rare to do a college student alert, and missing child alert 38 compared to Amber. You can see there was 3 last year. So definitely there's not as many Ambers, and I'm so thankful though that New York State does have the missing child alert, because I think it's really serious when we have kids who, you know, have wandered, young children wandered from their home or they're suicidal, that we have that resource for them. I'm just going to take a break and let you guys read this. So this just gives you an example of our information distribution mechanisms, and you can see it's quite broad. We have a lot of partners with us who will get our information out there when we're doing, and it breaks it down by Amber Alert, all the resources there, right? Missing child alert, college student, vulnerable adult, a few less, and then our non-alerts, then where it's like standard case. I just want to say we have a really great partnership with New York City Notify. Every alert that we put out in the New York City area, they redisseminate, and they have like millions of people that get that. We also have a good partnership with the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission. They get our alerts, they push it out to all their taxis and limousines who have a display thing in the front on their dashboard, and it shows that. Here's just some data on last year for our alerts. This was our missing child alerts. You can see how high the number of kids with autism, right? We had 12, and suicidal missing child 18, where suicidal parent, the child was missing, but not suicidal. It was a parent who took the child who was suicidal. So that was a little different. Most kids are the subject of a missing child alert were missing on foot. Alert responsible, we had 3 were definitely guessed. The alert was responsible for locating the child. 18 no and 17 unknown. Sometimes it's really hard to get that information back on the resolution of that. Thankfully, all the kids who were the subject of alerts were located alive last year. We did have 11 children who were reported missing last year who were located deceased, but they were not subjects of alerts. And then 30, this was unusual because usually some of them are located out of state, but last year all the subjects of the alerts were located within New York State. And then our vulnerable adult alerts, you can see, dementia very high there. We had 110 different dimensions here, with 53 were in a vehicle, 91 on foot, so we have more in a car. 42 of the alerts were responsible for locating the person, and I'm convinced that that has a lot to do with them being in a car, because people are calling in when they see them. So that has a lot to do with it. Also, a lot of people are located in hospitals with dementia who are not able to identify themselves. The hospitals all get our posters, and we've had many people identified through getting our posters and then reunited with their families. We had 138 were safely located and 6 were located deceased. Also kind of unusual, there's no unresolved, all of them were located. And then you can see that does break down the states also. We had 2 in New Jersey, 1 in Ohio, 3 in Pennsylvania, and 1 in Virginia. A lot of times, especially if they're in a car, they'll just go until they run out of gas. We had a lady one time who drove down railroad tracks and got stuck, so MTA found her, things like that. So that's the way the alerts are now. What's the future of alerts? We're about to kick off a review of how we do our alerts and try to update them. One thing that we're partnering with, and we have gotten an account, but we're not using it yet, is iPause. So is anybody familiar with FEMA iPause? Anybody know what it is? All right, so this is a free resource tool that the federal government provides through FEMA, and it's iPause, Integrated Public Alert and Warning Systems. So they have the emergency alert system. They have the wireless emergency alert system. They also have NOAA, the National Oceanic Weather Service. And then they have other alerting like digital signs, digital billboards, things like that. Let's see if this is going to work. Everybody used to hearing that on the TV and radio, right? And then pay attention. Is it a tornado? Is it what's happening, right? Well, I used to live in the South, so I think about tornadoes. Maybe you guys are like, a blizzard, I don't know. So now we're getting used to hearing this. That's a new sound that we're getting on our phones, right? Do you love it at 3 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, and it's funny, one time I was flying down to Florida for a conference and I had to change planes at Baltimore at BWI, and the plane landed and everybody turned on their phones. Well, there was an Amber Alert activated in the area, so that sound went throughout the airplane as people turned on their phones. So it's kind of crazy, but it's a really good tool. So the FEMA iPause has just approved a new code for EAS and the WEA, and that's the MEP code, which is for missing and endangered individuals who are over the age of 17, or missing and endangered individuals under 18 whose circumstances didn't qualify for an Amber Alert. So this is something brand new. They're still in the process of coming out with the date where it's going to be activated, but you know how the federal government is, it's a little more technical even than the state trying to get things approved. So this is really good news that they were able to get it approved, and now they're going forward with implementing it very soon. One thing I love about wireless emergency alerts, and you talked about how we had those regions, right? So we're not over activating. With a wireless emergency alert, you can put it down to like a 2-block radius. It's amazing how well you can target it. So if you have a vulnerable adult or you have a child with autism who has wandered, there's no point in activating that whole region of 10 or 11, whichever regions we have right here in this area. We're in region 9. If you know the kid might be just in this 1-mile area or 3-block area, you can just activate those wireless emergency alerts to the cell phones just in that area. So I think you're going to be able to get a lot more people who can actually help locate the person, but you're not over activating outside of that area. Another thing that's really cool about the wireless emergency alerts is you can set a time for it. So as I said, when we turned on our phones on the airplane, we weren't there when they actually activated it, but then we got the alert. So say if you have one activated through this area in Albany, right, and I'm driving back from Syracuse and I'm coming through the area, as I enter into that area, I'll get the alert. So I think that's really cool too, and you can set an expiration time on it. So then after that, or after you cancel it, you're not going to get it. This is also something that's really cool. This is a message design dashboard. So one of the problems they've had with the wireless emergency alerts is people not sending really good messages. And do you guys remember what happened in Hawaii? When they were, first of all, Hawaii's had a few problems with it. There's nuclear bombs on the way, missiles. When it was an accidental, it was supposed to be a test and people thought they were about to die. And then they had the horrible fire last year, and they weren't getting very good messages on the wireless emergency alerts. And we've seen this recently. It happened in the New York area where we got wireless emergency alerts that were from Connecticut, but they were bleeding over. Was it Massachusetts? It was, I think it was Massachusetts, but it bled over into New York. But they didn't say who it was from. So if you don't say this is from Connecticut, you think something is happening in New York. So at the University at Albany, at SUNY Albany, Dr. Jeanette Sutton and her team there, her testing lab, developed a dashboard. So it's going to help alerting authorities, whether it's your Homeland Security or your emergency management or us at the clearinghouse or the state police for the Amber Alerts. It's going to help us design better messages, which is going to provide people with actionable information, and it's going to be awesome. So let me show you a little bit. This is part of the dashboard, and then you can see on the right-hand side what your message is going to look like when you're putting it out there to everybody. And then the review checklist, it highlights things that might be wrong with that message. So, in just a few weeks, October 10th, we are kicking off our New York Alert Review and Advisory Plan. We're doing this in combination with the state police and all our alert stakeholders, and we've hired some expert consultants to help us. Dr. Jeanette Sutton from SUNY Albany is one of them. So she's going to be advising us, and Eddie Bertola, who also works closely with FEMA, used to be the Amber Alert Coordinator out in California. He was state police, or what do they call them in California?
Highway Patrol.
Highway Patrol, thank you. Highway Patrol out in California, and he was the Amber Coordinator out there. He has helped Hawaii, the DR. He's traveled all over the country and in other, throughout our country and other countries, helping them get their alerts up and running. So we're going to kick this off. We're going to review. It's going to be done in 1 year, hopefully. That's the plan in 3 stages. Okay. The first is reviewing. The second is designing our new platforms. And the third is implementation. So we're going to try to streamline this, and we're going to try to take advantage of all the technology that we currently don't have. So those wireless emergency alerts that we're not using now, we're going to start using them. But it will be with some rules. There will be certain types of cases we would never use it on. There will be some cases we will, and then there's always exceptions to every rule, right? But we will establish quiet hours with those exceptions. A lot of states do have the quiet hours. People really don't want to get that noise that I played for you, waking them up at 3 in the morning when you're like, okay, what am I going to do from here? I'm in bed. I'm not out and about where I could see this person. So we have to be reasonable with that. Geographic activation guidelines, specific wireless emergency alert approval procedures, and the duration of the broadcast. So we're going to get very specific directions on that. That's what's coming for our alerts in the future. As I said, we're here, not me, but our staff is here 24/7. So after regular business hours, which are now after midnight until 8 a.m. and on the weekends for emergencies. But the rest of the time, we're here to help you with anything you need, whether it's with a missing person case, with its training, Project Lifesaver, cold case, anything like that. Give us a call. So does anybody have any questions? All right, well, thank you. You've been great. And I didn't really put that noise in there just to make sure you were awake, but I think it could benefit both, right? All right, well, thank you very much. Have a great day.
I was talking about